play today. The tickets got refunded to my friend and we couldn't figure out why. So we come anyways to the theater after dinner and they're like, oh, well, we refunded all the tickets because there's no air conditioning in our theaters.
Trafficking film Sound of Freedom trashed by liberal outlets as QAnon adjacent. Website Jezebel claimed at last QAnon Camp Appeal gets the cinematic exploration it demands.
Pretty familiar with him because he doesn't really hide his association with this real wild plot that involves, drinking the blood of children and things like that.
Developing through technology an ability for consumers to measure their own carbon footprint. What does that mean? That's where are they traveling? How are they traveling? What are they eating? What are they consuming on the platform? So, individual carbon footprint tracker.
So by default, a digital identity implies that you are always in a digital prison. Since you have a digital identity and you're in a prison, you are by default a criminal.
There's a producer I know, successful producer. His whole opinion about women on film, from beginning to end, is very brief. He says, women on film, either naked or dead. Both is better. And it's like, whoa! The man has got a spiritual malady.
I was in the locker room, obviously putting my suit on, and all of a sudden it got dead silent. I turn around, this person's towering over every other person in the locker room, drops the clothes, full male, like a fully intact male with male genitalia. And almost subconsciously, you just cover. Like, it's just a subconscious inherent feeling when you see a male with male parts watching you undress. It was like, I thought I was missing something. I thought, am I like not grasping something? Why is no one talking about this? Why is a coach not sticking up for us? Why is someone within the NCAA? Why were we not warned? We did not give our consent for this. No one.
Holy smokes, I'm hyped after that.
What a crazy new intro.
What do you think?
That's good.
Yeah, it's all right.
Yeah, I still look like balls, but hey, it's all good.
Yeah, gotta get Mrs. Rain out there and get a photo shoot.
Yeah, I just put Mrs. Rain in the intro instead of me. There we go.
All right, there we go.
That'd be better.
Why not?
Yeah.
All right, we are ready to spread it tonight, ladies and gentlemen. We have got a huge show again. Our last time premiering the last video in this China interference series was huge. We always get a great crowd in with Matthew Ehret, and we just can't wait to go tonight. Before that, though, let's get a Yukon check-in. Rain, what's going on up there?
Oh, not much. We've got a couple of forest fires up here, like the rest of Canada. Finally, one that was semi close to us. We got a lot of smoke from it, but we weren't in any real threat of burning. I think I managed to save all the houses. So, but yeah, pretty big, like 14 or 1,500,000 hectares in size.
What's with the forest fires, man? Like,
It's been really hot. This has been a weird summer. Like it's been hot since mid-May. Like, almost no rain and just sunny every day, which is
yeah,
weird.
you're like fully like 10 degrees hotter than Ottawa.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's crazy.
yeah,
It's a big
bonkers.
time. Otherwise, yeah, not too much. Just just enjoying the weather.
Gotta be the chemtrails.
Must be something. Yeah.
Yeah, well, we have tonight's video is we're world premiering the third in the Chinese interference. What do we really know? Series from Canadian Patriot Press, and we're going to be watching it here, world premiere exclusive. This is like Friday Night Videos back in the 80s, man. World premiere of the new Van Halen Jump video. And we're really honored to have it on. This was edited by me, working with our guest tonight, who's going to join us to give us a detailed background on this. We want you guys in the chat jumping in. What do you want to know about Chinese interference, China, Russia, Nazis? Oh, just you wait. Nazis are everywhere. Oh my God. Why does it always come back to the Nazis, Rain?
Yeah. Oh, I know. Well,
It's always,
they probably are everywhere, just not in the way they've been telling us that they are.
yeah. I feel like almost like they've always been everywhere. Well, we're about to find out. We're going to bring up onto the show, and we're going to bring onto the show Matthew Ehret. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. You get intro like that on any other show and I'll give you $50.
Oh my God. Dude, Jason, Rain, hey, how you doing, guys? I gotta say, you made me so cool in that
Yeah,
intro.
bro.
Damn.
Well, it wasn't hard, man.
Oh, stop it.
Yeah, you had a good haircut in that picture. You made it easy, bro.
The haircut did go a long way, yeah. No, but your editing skills are just fantastic. And for those who don't know, this is why Jason and I started working together on videos, because I just knew of him as a host of Super Spreaders with Rain, and he asked me to come on his show, and there wasn't a huge amount of viewers who were watching, but it was significant enough, and I said sure. And then he sent a little message saying, like, yeah, here's the promo I made. It's this 10-minute video commercial to promote our upcoming interview, and I was like, holy, this is like a high quality production to promote an interview. I've never had this before. And I was like, no, we have to start working together. So this has been good.
Totally, man. It's great. The universe, God brought us together, man. It was just the way the
And Patriot
convoy.
truckers, yeah.
It was during the convoy and the coronavirus investigation committee with Reiner Fulmeck was going on, and that's where I saw you. And it's like, okay, we're going to talk about what happened from the virus response. And
Yeah.
you're in there like, yeah, the Venetians in City of London. And I'm like, yes, yes, somebody's talking about this shit. Yeah, let's go.
Well, that was the good thing. I really like this about Reiner is that even though he's kind of new to thinking on this level about international conspiracies as a principal driver of human civilization, he's relatively new, But despite that, he was able to discover, on the one hand, he took responsibility to say, well, we got to do something. And he recognized pretty quickly, quicker than most, that the entire alternative media world is swarming with misinformation, psyops, all sorts of false narratives that give off the veneer of being anti-establishment, but in actuality are completely run by the very same death cult, psyops that have been trying to get us into a cage for a long time. So he asked me he got the sense that I had a pretty good mapping of how the British Empire never disappeared, how this British Empire was tied to the same old oligarchical network that goes back to ancient times, and asked me just to, try to help people focus a little bit. So I really appreciated him giving me those opportunities. And
I
that
was
was
just
good.
so impressed with he is a lawyer, right?
Yes.
That he was building the case, and he realized once he must have gotten a little bit into this that he needed to prove some kind of motive, like from the ground up. And I think were you the first guest? I think you
No,
were
but I think I got in early
close.
enough.
You're really
Yeah.
early, and to set this, that he realized that we needed to tell the story from the ground up instead of just right away going into like, oh, the lockdowns were dumb and here's why, and there's plenty of evidence for that.
Yeah.
Then instead, we're going to start with the deep history, and
Exactly.
that's what I respected about it.
Yeah, the
And that's what I
context of
always
everything.
enjoy.
Everybody gets because so many people, I would say, like we've been sort of chewing and working with this idea that life is but a shadow of reality, and that most of the mythologies that people have been led to believe are reality are just shadows on the cave wall, right? That there's this higher reality that can only be discovered by using your mind in a more critical way than we're expected to through the system that we were born into. But a lot of people have their learning curve really fresh and only were shaken out of their I guess, for lack of a better word, normieism in the last couple of years since this whole thing was sprung onto the world in January of 2020. So they don't know how to. I mean, it's really fresh. They're really fresh and trying to make sense of things. So there's a tendency to look to feel like you're drowning and a desire to like latch on to the first thing that they can hold on to that floats, which is dangerous because that desire to find just a right answer oftentimes is driven by fear, which is bad for it's not a conducive emotional environment for truth seeking, which requires a sort of creative flexibility and self-reflection. It requires certain aptitudes of humility, right? Thinking about thinking a lot, thinking about how do I judge my wrong thoughts and replace them with a better hypothesis to better resolve paradoxes that could otherwise not be resolved with my false hypothesis. So that takes a lot of sort of like work. So without that, a lot of people just want the right answer, like the kind of the way that schools have taught us to just get the right answer on the test to pass the test. A lot of bad habits, and because of that, there's a myopia, right? So people tend to also fall into the trap of wanting an enemy to hate and to fight against, without taking the time to first investigating. Well, what are the dynamics of history that created the present? What is the global chemistry that is shaping the contextual environment in which my particular concerns are located?
You see a lot of people in the zone that we're in that you just said they've woken up recently, and it's just like the Matrix. You get out of that green cocoon of liquid, in the Matrix, and now what?
Mhm.
Now what? Now you have to find out that the deja vu you're having with the cat it's a glitch. You know, like or the literal red pill, and it's a lot for people to take, and you see a lot of there's a degree of lost souls amongst there. I'm in a lot of Twitter groups, highly active on Twitter, really cool people, but you see a lot of this flailing kind of anger that
Mhm.
feeds into what I find are two things that are constants. It's as soon as anyone gets any level of respect or following that's coming from our general side of things, attack them. They've got to be controlled opposition
Yep.
because they've had their hearts broken. They've been lied to by everyone. COVID was a lie. Iraq was a lie. Everything's a freaking lie. So obviously, this person who's seems to be saying everything correct and is getting famous for it, well, they must be a controlled opposition, and they start attacking each other.
Yeah.
And
Well,
and
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 don't get me
and
wrong,
and
there are definitely controlled opposition as well.
right,
But yeah,
right.
we tend to jump the gun sometimes when labeling it and trying to figuring it out. But definitely, like there is a lot of situations of actual controlled opposition. That is
Someone out there is,
Yeah.
but I think that everyone's in a race to be the one that says, "See, I told you he was controlled opposition. See, I told
Well,
you we couldn't trust him." It seems like a race to that imaginary finish line that
okay,
could
yeah.
destroy people that are they have nothing. They're not controlled opposition. That's
Yeah.
the big danger.
Well, I think the art of judgment is really an art, right? And like all art, like this part of the problem of our current society, that I was like I was trained in fine arts. As such, I was trained to be mediocre and a faker because the way that the fine arts departments are wired is to basically not really develop any of the skills that shape the growth of the actual like tradition of the fine arts, visual, sculpture, whatever, over centuries and centuries. All of that heritage that gave rise to the greatest explosions of the aesthetic development of humankind that is very connected to the growth and the maturation of our rational instincts. These things go together. All of that tradition in the way that it is currently taught as far as the arts in the West, in the type of educational experience I was given, and most people are given if you're born in Canada, Europe, or the USA, is to basically say none of that matters. Mastering or understanding the techniques of the past are irrelevant. All you need to do is express your emotions wherever you're at, and blob like shoot paint on a canvas, take a dump on a canvas, whatever. As long as you can impose a rational justification for why you did the crazy absurd thing that people are going to see on the canvas when they walk into the exhibit, if you can like fake some academic intellectualism over some like metaphorical symbolism that you just make up for the paint splatterings, that's good art. That's a success. And I mean, at a certain point, I realized I had to get the hell out of there because I was being depatterned mentally, and I was being rewarded for deconstructing my mind and soul and becoming more and more abstract, which I knew was doing damage to my being. And I was like, well, wait a minute, why can't I just look at not only just look at from a distance, but look at up close the techniques of great artists of the past and try to like rediscover how they constructed their paintings or their thoughts that animated the ideas that would go into the construction of a Rembrandt painting. Compare that to anything you see with a Jackson Pollock or a lot of the celebrated modern art or abstract art today. It's a universe of difference, but it destroys your ability to judge intelligibly beautiful or ugliness like you can't, because when you're judging an idea, like an intention that's animating actions in the material world, like ideas are not material, right? But ideas are causal to material changes of human civilization. So thoughts animate action in the physical world, but you can't see a thought the way I can see my my phone. A thought is a thought. It's beyond that realm of the material. But some thoughts can be damn ugly. So if you don't have an internally developed sense of ugliness, and obviously its opposite being beauty, an actual truthful sense of beautifulness, then the ability to identify the ugly intentions behind the nice words that might be used by, let's say, a Justin Trudeau or a Barack Obama, or I won't even say Biden, who's not able to use words, but whatever it is, you're deprived of your ability to see an intention to, or thus to identify a conspiracy for good or for bad, or to play a role.
So we're talking about, to some degree, kind of the postmodern thing that where words and values get deconstructed to the point that they're meaningless, whereas before traditionalists, Rain and I talk about this a lot, especially these days. The massive, I don't know if I'd say it's a majority, but it's kind of like, not everyone, not even maybe the majority of people that are on, say, like our skeptical side of mainstream media and globalists and all this stuff. People that are generally on our side might not be majority Christian or religious, but if you're Christian or religious, you're like 99% guaranteed to be on this side of things because you have a base. As you were just saying, you immediately discern that sounds evil.
Yeah.
Right away. Whereas if you're all postmodern and relativist and everything's groovy, then you're like, hey, well, maybe men can be women, right?
Yeah.
I mean, who knows? Who really can say?
Well, yeah,
Where,
and that's, good can be evil and ugly can be
sure.
beautiful, and there's just no like Mariangela, somebody's commenting in the comments section said, she said, I think the art of judgment needs to be based on grace of discernment. And that's something you get within most good religion, is a sense of grace that's tied to morality, which if you can like tap into that source, you're naturally going to find a much more healthy approach to developing your own being and your own like way of living, but also you'll be able to see where it's lacking a lot more clearly in things around you, which lacks any sense of love, grace, agapic, empathy, agapic love. Like any of these higher sentiments will not be present if you've, like you just said, if you've just been immersed in a world that has just said, what's up, like what is true is how you particularly feel at any given moment.
Yeah, who are you to say that something's good or bad? Who am I to say? Who am I? Who am I to say that crime is bad? Some crime could be good, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, homeless people living on the street outside your apartment and attacking people could be good. Sure.
Well, we just came back from Vancouver, and if anybody has driven down,
oh my gosh,
place in Vancouver called East Hastings.
Yes.
And you guys have you guys been to East Hastings?
It was legendary when I lived out there. I lived
it was
out
already
there.
bad.
It
was already bad. I hadn't been down there for quite a few years, and it was already nuts, my memories. But when Cynthia and I were
when I was out there, they were working hard to gentrify it. They had a conservative government. They had huge building projects up. They were trying to build out Gastown, the kind of traditional, cool, like really like English road looking paved with stepping stones kind of zone with really nice apartments going up and all that. I mean, there are arguments to be made for and against gentrification and this and that, but they were really trying to push out, especially near the waterfront, get some nice properties going. It's a great tourist zone, really classy part of town, but butts right up against East Hastings and the worst of the worst. Yeah. And under years of NDP and Liberal governments, they have just walked away. It's like LA, right? The camps and tent cities and stuff. With official policies to we can't shame these people. How dare we? We can't shame them. We can't remove them from the streets. That would shame them. We can't do that. And and it's just grown. Now it's like dozens of square miles of that part of town are just you dare not go in there.
No, it's terribly scary in the sense of thinking about the fact that this is all by design. And when you look, it's not like we don't have a solution to the drug problem. But the solution involves going to, on the one hand, bottom up is actually providing people a type of help that they require, like they've done in Alberta, I think to a good success, is give them the actual therapy, the help don't necessarily legalize it to normalize it, because that has been proven everywhere it's been done to have the very opposite effect, which unfortunately BC has gone in that direction. Now it's like, you can't, as a cop, you can't arrest somebody for like smoking crack cocaine in front of a store. Everything is legal, which that doesn't help. On the other hand, go after the actual banks that are laundering top down the international profits from
Right.
the narco terror gangs, both in the Middle East, in Latin America, and beyond. This is all being done and supported and organized and administered by banks like HSBC, which I guess this could slowly start transitioning, because I know a lot of people tuned in today to get a preview, or not a preview, but the introduction to a couple of new videos, or episode 3 of our ongoing series. But HSBC is a bank that, keep in mind, this is a bank that is a London bank. And I've actually encountered, since there is amongst the alternative media's consumers, there is a susceptibility to falling for this idea that the arch enemy of Western civilization is the atheistic, godless, commie supervillains who we all have to fear and hate, who have infiltrated our Western democracies. And one of the examples I've actually seen people use is that, well, look at HSBC. People are many astute commentators even are smart enough to recognize that HSBC has been caught and found guilty laundering hundreds of billions of dollars of drug profits over the years. And they say, well, that's proof that China has been now organizing the new revenge opium wars against us. Because look at it, it's Hong Kong, Shanghai Bank of Commerce. Now, this is a London bank. That is such an ignorant thing that I've encountered so many people, and there's so many layers of susceptibility to these various anti-China narratives that are being like thrown out in every direction. Americans are getting it heavy. Canadians are getting it heavy, to deflect attention away from the actual hand of, well, who's behind the harm reduction of the drug decriminalization policy that's designed to create the effects we see in East Hastings and Vancouver, all over Canada. It's George Soros. Soros is behind that. He's behind the Dying with Dignity campaign going back to the 80s and before that to massively make euthanasia available widely, even for mature minors, as is now the case. That's George Soros. Who's behind the color revolutions that have overthrown governments around the world?
Did you say mature minors?
Mature minors are the new category they've created in Canada for those youth under 18 who might want to get the death pill.
Or get neutered.
Huh?
Or get neutered.
Or get neutered, whatever the case may be, without parental supervision,
Mature
which might
minors.
increase their chances of wanting to end it, because life, depression is going to increase by 90%.
Legalize
Is that
pedophilia.
right?
So that's just another pathway to legalize pedophilia, isn't it?
Which gets you into that whole domain.
Yeah.
And all of these things are different sides of the exact same operation, but nobody's talking about that to the degree that they fall into the trap of thinking 8 big bad evil Chinese boogeymen, just like in the Cold War, out to get us.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, HSBC is the bank that Senator Carl Levin found to be guilty in 2012 of laundering the drug money. They had auditors imposed. They paid off a massive fine, and they kept doing the exact same thing. But this is the bank that was created in the wake of the British Opium Wars in 1865 by the British to better facilitate the opium trade and flux into China, to destroy China itself, which had been for a very long time the world's biggest economy, up until the moment that the British Empire decided to sink their tentacles into that, along with India at the same time.
And didn't they have a huge reckoning in the 90s? Like way back in the 90s or early 2000s, HSBC had another, like a huge, big thing that went down early 2000s. Am I wrong?
Well,
maybe I'm wrong, but they've been caught multiple times laundering drug money.
They have been.
Clearly, openly. So therefore, Matt, I guess I've got to say, well, they were caught. So now they're obviously good.
Yeah, well,
now they're obviously a good bank. It's like the Church Committee. The Church Committee found out everything the CIA was doing, and ever since then, the CIA are just patriotic, good, law-abiding law enforcers, right? Isn't that right?
Right. Yeah, I mean, you know, these mythologies are crazy, eh? Like all of this stuff came to the surface in 1975, so they obviously cleaned up their act. These banks cleaned up their act. Everybody's good now, and now we can just trust all of the mainstream media that has been continuously enjoying the patronage of intelligence cover organizations like what we saw with Project Mockingbird. All of that can now still just occur, and we can just consume the same type of garbage we were consuming in the 1950s, 60s, 70s under the Cold War. All of that is now been cleaned up. And by the way, as a side note, HSBC, one of the key ways it was able to get into into Canada, because Canada actually had certain laws, which it's a messy story, but that you couldn't be a foreign-owned entity and have more than something like 10% of ownership of a corporation or bank in Canada up for a very long time. So how did HSBC, a London-controlled bank, become such an influencer in Canada? One of the ways they got their foot in the door was through the takeover of the Bank of British Columbia, the Bank of BC. And this is an important thing because the Bank of BC was originally created by Premier William Cecil Bennett, the premier for 20 years, who was one of the best anti-Malthusian lovers of humanity that I've ever seen, as far as a statesman in Canada who arose to power and fought this Malthusian Rhodes Scholar hive tooth and nail. And all of the hydroelectric power that British Columbians enjoy came from the fights that happened, led by WAC Bennett and a small grouping of trusted statesmen that he was able to work with, against the interests of BC Power Corps, which was run by a Rhodes Scholar who himself was tied to Vincent Massey and the London criminal enterprise. And when WAC Bennett tried to create a provincial, so-called pseudo-national bank that would allow him the type of freedom to provide the type of productive credit for the development of BC, especially the North and the Arctic, where he had plans to extend rail from Dease Lake all the way into the Yukon and into Alaska. That was all supposed to happen as the next phase of the rail that we currently have in BC. It was all stopped. But his plan was to get the type of freedom by creating a new bank called the Bank of British Columbia, which was quickly taken over by these operatives, these vipers, as soon as he was out. And it was corrupted from within, and it was used as a conduit for the HSBC to buy up like a virus taking over a good cell. And then that was the stepping stone for the HSBC infiltration of North America in the 70s that created the whole Silver Triangle, the drug flow of narcotics from East Asia, Laos, Cambodia, all of that stuff. It made its way into North America via British Columbia. And if people wonder why HSBC has a big share of Air Canada that was privatized a few years ago, and what that infrastructure provides for HSBC.
HSBC has a big interest in Air Canada, and they're known for laundering drug money.
I'm not saying anything, but think
hey,
about
right.
it.
Well,
Probably not a coincidence.
You can't be saying anything because everything's been cleared up. The intelligence agencies, they're all totally above board. Everything's perfectly patriotic.
Oh yeah,
nothing going on there.
No.
Yeah, move on.
Now, but China did make the point of putting HSBC on their enemies list back in 2020.
China did.
Yeah, China put HSBC, which it still somehow manages the printing of 1/3 of the Hong Kong currency. We discovered this when we were down in Hong Kong in 2019. We're like, what? Why does every Hong Kong banknote say printed by HSBC Bank? That's part of Hong Kong, by the way, is known and has been known to this day as the CIA of the Pacific. And HSBC, along with Standard and Charter, are two drug banks that still control a big chunk of the Hong Kong economy to this point. And China put them on the foreign agents enemies list back at the end of 2020, when it was discovered that there was a whole color revolutionary effort to use, basically a bunch of useful idiot tools in Hong Kong who were throwing Molotov cocktails, burning government buildings down, killing people by lighting them on fire. Just like we saw in Ukraine, Maidan, this was the same operation that was deployed to destabilize China, and China actually did something about it. So that's just interesting. And the fact that people in Canada are being induced not to hate and do something about HSBC and their criminal enterprises, but rather are being induced to hate the the nation which has gone to war with HSBC, China is an
Ban
interesting
George
thing.
Soros.
And George Soros, who China kicked out way back in 1989. But no. They're the enemy, we're told. And somebody just wrote a message. Mariangela wrote something. Could you pull it up again? Do you think it's precisely because of Bennett that BC is the first one to have their population culled? People forget that the left doesn't quit long-term goals. They definitely are afraid of the memory of Bennett coming back again. Bennett provided if anybody wants to know, like, what do I do? What do I do? Like, you know, everybody's like, well, okay, there's this death cult that's been working to try to like reduce the world population and kill us. What do I do? Well, first of all, take a deep breath and study some of what has worked every time it's been done in the past, number one. And a great case study is what did Bennett and his small network of close allies, what the hell did they do to carry out a successful fight against this? Because probably in that exercise, you're going to learn something about the types of weak points that the oligarchy has that they don't want you to investigate and remember or revive as far as something that would shape a current resistance.
So what are your takeaways from that, from the analyzing the Bennett situation? What did you find for weaknesses and such that you're saying?
Well, Bennett, number one, was able to use, there's something that was created in the Canadian British North America Act, which was originally designed to keep Canada weak and divided to be better controlled. And that involves Section 92 of the BNA Constitution that gives, there's a few sections actually, but that give the provinces vast sovereign rights and control of their education, resources, so much. Bennett understood this. And to the degree that he had collaborators in Ottawa, like C.D. Howe, you know, at different times, Canada, once a long time ago, we actually had patriots who cared about humanity in our federal office. Clarence Decatur Howe being one of them, who was the minister of everything. And that was a guy who drove forth the Canadian highway system, which was supposed to be much more than it turned out to be. But he had a whole plan, like the Avro Aero program, hypersonic jet development for Canada. Why does Canada even have can-do nuclear reactors, right? Deuterium, uranium reactors? Well, it's because of C.D. Howe. So to the degree that you had somebody who was going to facilitate and help the provinces with their aspirations for real, authentic development, Bennett and other like-minded provincial premiers were very happy to work with the federal government. But unfortunately, whenever the British Empire was able to put their deep state operatives in our federal office and started sabotaging the aspirations of the province, the better provincial premiers, well, they had the legal right, according to our constitution, to take control of things themselves and to control the development of their own resources, the system that they would, that's why each of the provinces have a different healthcare system, for example. Unfortunately, as well, the federal government still kept the control of the financial policies, which made it difficult for provinces to get the type of revenue they needed to do it themselves. But Bennett was able to go to war with the private BC Power Corporation, for example, and nationalize them because they were depriving BC of the ability to develop the hydroelectric dams that Bennett understood on the Peace River, on the Colorado River Treaty dams of the South. BC Hydro was preventing all of that to keep their rates high and to keep the scarcity high, the lack of abundant energy for industry and civilian use. So Bennett went to war, and he basically said, if you don't want to use the resources, that abrogates your right to that the right to property for a corporation is limited to the degree that the corporation doesn't actually use the talent or the property that it professes to enjoy. And so he took control of the corporation and then forced BC Power under a new management to become BC Hydro. And then that became a driving conduit for the development of all of the northern hydroelectric dams, reservoirs that created a massive abundance of food production. He also worked with John F. Kennedy in the South to build the Columbia River Treaty system as far as the BC components of that were concerned. And he also was able to have the smarts to work with like-minded people, like John F. Kennedy, who he invited, and he met with JFK, and JFK came out supporting him against Ottawa when
Oh, wow.
Elliott Trudeau was in there as justice minister.
Wow.
No, BC has the right to develop this, and BC was working very closely with certain people in Quebec at the time around Daniel Johnson Sr., the head of the L'Union Nationale, and Jean Lesage, who all also wished to have real development and develop their own hydroelectric potential, which was made possible through a massive loan of $100 million by W.A.C. Bennett, not by Ottawa, but rather by Bennett, who gave Quebec that loan, which gave us the ability to become a hydroelectric engineering powerhouse to this very day. And that it's taken them 50 years to sabotage and undo that type of fight. But those are the sorts of things that one would discover has worked and could work again if we could organize ourselves in a way that was actually competent.
Instead, like our parents grew up in a world where it just like this infinite promise of nuclear reactors and hydroelectric jams and these giant building processes and transnational highways, railways. Trains are going to get faster and fancier, and so are planes, and we'll do tunnels under the ocean. Everything's going to be incredible. And now here we are. All the reactors have been neglected. They're falling apart. The plans that go into effect for 20 years, right when they're going to build the pipeline, it gets shut down. They shut down pipelines. We're not building anything.
No.
My dad would be so disappointed. It was kind of like we were told we'd have flying cars. Every generation's got their flying cars.
Yeah.
And for my dad, it would have been this incredible growth, the 50s, the promise of we're just going to keep doing this. Energy's going to get cheaper. Everyone's going to be more connected. We're going to have more, local power stations. We're going to have better connections. And we're now in the age of cancellation.
Yeah.
We just spent billions of taxpayer dollars to not build the most profitable gas pipeline in Alberta. And Biden's first act in the presidency was canceling the biggest pipeline in history.
Yeah. No, it's the opposite game, right? Like it's what we were talking about. The theme I think that people have to keep in mind is right. Black becomes white, ugly becomes beautiful, right becomes wrong, male becomes female. Like all of the there is no standard of judgment of what is truth. And so we have become so mushy and mediocre in using our power of God-given reason that we have allowed ourselves to abide by these sophistical lines of contortionistic reasoning logic that has allowed us to conclude that we should be spending, like you said, California just spent something like $500 million to demolish 4 massive hydroelectric dams this year.
What?
I mean, yeah, they just spent that thinking that that's how you're going to get better revenue. That's better business sense to destroy these dams. That's going to create what? Massive scarcity of how many farmers relied upon the reservoirs and the water management to produce food when those dams were there. How many?
And this is the most water managed economy on Earth.
Yeah, they're just blowing it up to liberate the deserts from the artificial imposition of human thought and technology that caused the deserts to become shackled by green things.
Maybe they'll give it to the homeless.
Yeah.
There we go. Solution. Make me governor of California. I got it all figured out. We'll blow up the dams and put the homeless in the reservoir.
But see, so here's the interesting thing, and then we can maybe transition to the screening that people are waiting for.
Yeah, but so let's get this down to why we need the Chinese bugbear, and then we'll get into the first episode.
Yeah. So one of the reasons why here's a painful irony of history is that Governor Brown, the first Governor Brown Sr. of California that oversaw the growth of California's breadbasket. California is a natural desert, and it became a breadbasket by the careful long-term planning and growth of technology under people like Governor Jerry Brown, the senior. Same thing at the same time he was the governor, while W.A.C. Bennett was the premier of British Columbia, who did the same thing. Both of them had sons who became premiers and governors of their respective provinces and states. Brown Jr. is a eco-freak Malthusian disaster. He had been targeted early on for being brainwashed He accepted his brainwashing, and he became a fanatical, cultish hater of everything his father did. And that probably, people say that broke his father's heart to the point that his father died. But W.A.C. Bennett's son as well was another guy, Bill Bennett, who became premier of the NDP of British Columbia in the 70s. As soon as Bennett was out, his son came in very, very soon thereafter. And his son basically ran roughshod, destroying and undoing everything that his father did and brought in Pierre Elliott Trudeau's Environmental Protection Agency to start cordoning off big areas of British Columbia from development by law under federal mandate to say, no, these regions are going to become protected zones that no human being will be allowed to develop economically. That was Bennett's own son. So on the one hand, that should be a good proof that the eugenicists are wrong and that moral virtue does not flow through our genetic stock, but through something else. So that's a good sign of it. But it's a sick, sad irony of history that has to be undone. But all that to say now, for the videos that we've done, I know you and I, we were talking about how, in the course of this series, it's going to be an ongoing series. We did 2 that were about 9 minutes long each. The first one on Chinese election interference, which a lot of Canadians, if you did a survey, they would believe that the Chinese police stations. Yeah. The first one was on Chinese police stations, which most Canadians have been led to believe are being run all over Canada and the US, arresting people. And that's part of the Chinese infiltration and undermining of our Western democratic capitalistic governments.
That's easily the silliest of the bunch.
It's super silly, and we're able to take a nice, fun, cartoonish approach, but we took a lot of hardcore facts to evaluate what's the origin, which think tank is behind this is there evidence even behind it at all? And we're able to demolish that, demonstrating that it's all hot air being repeated by mainstream media that never actually needs to prove anything it says, but people believe because, again, that's how soft-mindedness works. So I think we did a pretty good job blowing that out of the water. The second video took a little bit of a shift because a lot of these techniques have already been used in Russiagate to get Americans to think that Russia has infiltrated their government, put Donald Trump, Russian stooge, in power, all of this stuff. So we took a bit of time to look at how that fraud played itself out and continues to be played out, run by the FBI, MI6 being a key role in a key player in this story. And we just blew that whole Russiagate thing out of the water. And then with this one, we're like, okay, well, let's tackle Chinese election interference. But it's difficult. It was very difficult to tackle it head on because at the end of the day, it's a CSIS report, right? That is still classified. Nobody's really seen it.
Yep.
That had some claims leaked to cooperative mainstream media outlets, Globe and Mail.
But
Global
wait,
Time,
one
Global
person
TV.
has seen it.
Yes, that's
One
true.
One person has seen it and made a detailed report about it.
Sure. Yeah. But that person, as we're going to see, is, understandably has very questionable affiliations with
might have gone skiing a little too often with the Trudeaus.
Might have gone skiing with the Trudeau family too much. So, the Johnson report's not that easy to drink back. So again, it became difficult to tackle this story the same way we did the former 2 because there's nothing really to refute. It's like there's no evidence being brought to the table to debunk. It's all just sort of shadowy claims with anonymous sources and nothing is really to be dealt with. So we're like, well, let's take a step back here and actually let's just look at what the hell is CSIS, this patriotic agency that we're supposed to believe really cares about our democratic values and wants to shed the light and ring the alarm bell on China's aggressive intentions. What the hell is the CSIS thing to begin with? What is the complex that created it? So we took the time to do that, and it's a bit of a longer video, maybe 25 minutes. Usually we stick to less than 10 minutes for these shorts. So I think you and I agreed what we'll do this time is we'll play, for those who might have missed it or might want to be reminded, episode 2 on the FBI and Russiagate, and then we'll transition into the actual grand unveiling of the long-awaited "What the hell is CSIS" and the Five Eyes video.
Indeed. Shall we?
Yeah,
Let's do it.
All right. Share screen. Who is our enemy? Part 2. So this is really the Empire Strikes Back of the series.
There we go.
No, the new one's The Empire Strikes Back. The first two are kind of the fluffy ones. The episode 3, when we show that's The Empire Strikes Back. We got to pull back and get a little pensive. We're still having fun with who is our real enemy.
Yeah, we're still tickling people in the nose with a feather in this one, and then they'll get knocked out with the undercut.
All right, here we go. We are being told daily that China is interfering in our country's democracies. From secret police stations, military balloon attacks, honeypots, biowarfare, economic manipulation, and election interference, the media, intelligence agencies, and political class have all come to agree there isn't a single part of our lives that isn't threatened by the evil agenda of the Chinese. Obviously, these allegations insinuate operations well above and beyond the normal levels of statecraft and diplomacy expected of internationally engaged nations. Such bold claims must be backed up by solid evidence, right? It's not like our media and governments would lie to us, would they?
I think we will find weapons of mass destruction. I think it's important that we do. He's lying to him when he says he doesn't have weapons of mass destruction.
It's high time we enumerate these many allegations and check the available facts, lest we rush into judgments that, as a nation, could derail us from the track to world peace. As the world is slowly learning from the debacle in Ukraine, nations acting under false pretenses bear heavy costs. On November 2016, everyone knew that Russia had taken control of the USA. Great patriots like former FBI Director Robert Mueller and the mainstream media worked closely to ensure that Americans understood that Donald Trump's victory against Hillary Clinton was made possible by Russian WikiLeaks and Russian financing directly from the Kremlin.
The Russian government, they have hacked American websites, American accounts of private people, of institutions. Then they have given that information to WikiLeaks for the purpose of putting it on the internet, clearly from Putin himself.
All educated citizens were taught to have these correct opinions, and they were also taught to believe that Russia selected Donald Trump in order to revive right-wing racist extremism in order to destroy American democracy from within. The FBI taught educated Americans that uneducated Trump-supporting domestic terrorists tried to kidnap Democratic Governor Gretchen Whitmer in 2020, which was thankfully thwarted by the astute, patriotic FBI. These well-educated Americans also learned that those same white supremacist extremists tried to take control of the USA in the worst insurgency on American soil since the Civil War on January 6, 2021. And then...
No, and then!
Something happened.
It might not have produced everything of what some Republicans hoped for. It is, regardless, devastating to the FBI, and to a degree, it does exonerate Donald Trump.
So he said it exonerated Donald Trump to a degree, but in the past, the media has vouched for the debunked Steele dossier.
Based on our own reporting and word from numerous official sources, the dossier, in fact, is far from bogus.
No major thing from the dossier has been conclusively disproven.
We already know that the part about the coverage that they have on him with sex actions is supposed to be true.
The intelligence community has corroborated, whoever paid for it, has corroborated a lot of the information that was in there to begin with.
The Durham report was published demonstrating that Russiagate was a lie. Neither the FBI nor CIA had a shred of evidence that the Russian government had any influence over President Trump. And without issuing an overt apology, even CIA mouthpieces like CNN had to admit it was all a fraud. The reality was that the Christopher Steele dirty dossier was created out of thin air by MI6 operatives, including Sir Richard Dearlove, the former head of MI6, who had earlier overseen the creation of another sexed-up dossier that proved Iraq had weapons of mass destruction, leading to the murder of millions, the overthrow of Iraq, and a surveillance state dragnet under the Five Eyes. When evidence emerged that the Whitmer kidnapping plot of 2018 was entirely staged and carried out by FBI informants who made up 12 of the 16 members of the domestic terror cell, the issue moved from extremism to FBI entrapment. And what about January 6th? According to FBI whistleblower testimony and video evidence which has been made public, it appears that the same FBI operation which staged the Michigan kidnapping operation was done again on a national scale, with FBI informants and agents instigating violence the entire time.
And refused to condemn white supremacists and hate groups.
It wouldn't be surprising, since Steve D'Antuono, the FBI's Michigan bureau chief during the Whitmer fiasco, was immediately promoted to manage the Washington, D.C. bureau, where he oversaw the January 6th insurgency. During the same time period, it was revealed by leaked FBI documents that Joshua Caleb Sutter, controller of the white supremacist group Atomwaffen, and also the Satanic Temple of Blood cult, was paid over $180,000 by the FBI since 2003, $80,000 of which was paid out after 2018. An often forgotten Fordham University study from 2013 featuring analysis of over 138 cases of terrorism stopped by the valiant FBI since 9/11 demonstrated the embarrassing fact that almost no instances existed of domestic terrorism arising without the direction of the FBI itself. Reporting on the Fordham study, The Nation magazine stated,
"Nearly every major post-9/11 terrorism-related prosecution has involved a sting operation, at the center of which is a government informant. In these cases, the informants, who work for money or are seeking leniency on criminal charges of their own, have crossed the line from merely observing potential criminal behavior to encouraging and assisting people to participate in plots that are largely scripted by the FBI itself. Under the FBI's guiding hand, the informants provide the weapons, suggest the targets, and even initiate the inflammatory political rhetoric that later elevates the charges to the level of terrorism."
What about 9/11 itself, you ask? Well, let's just say 2 planes can't cause 3 buildings to collapse without more than a little help. Perhaps whoever was in charge of the FBI when 9/11 happened might know something about that paradox. Despite all of the lies which have come to the surface in recent years, it is no small irony that the same script is currently being pulled out of the dumpster, dusted off, and attempted once more as the Washington Post proclaims that Russia is out to do it again. What the Durham report proves they never did in the first place. One could even say they're determined to strike. When faced with this disturbing array of evidence, a conspiracy theorist, or realist as they are now known, might be forgiven for concluding that the USA's FBI, CIA, and Britain's MI6 appear to be colluding together to coerce Americans to live in fear of foreign governments in Eurasia, out to destroy our freedoms, while ignoring the fact that the actual foreign interference into our democratic institutions appears to be coming from those same agencies which have been financing terrorism, controlling media, and managing puppet politicians for decades. But, as the great washed and educated conspiracy theorists of Russiagate will tell us, the news media never lies, unless it's Fox News. And the intelligence community has cleaned up its act ever since the Church Committee brought the corruption of the CIA into the light over 40 years ago. Anything else is just misinformation.
But the destruction of the rule of law is a tremendous threat to Western civilization. And I was asked the other day, and I took a little heat for it. They said, "Who's our biggest threat? Is it China, sir? Is it Russia?" I said, "No, our biggest threat are high-level politicians that work in the United States government."
Man, that's some good beats.
Yeah, that was excellent.
Everything's better with a good beat.
Absolutely. You did it really well. You pulled so many different elements together really well in the multimedia world so beautifully. it made it much more palatable.
We're so far into this process, it's now getting kind of like amorphous. Like that's like written by you, written by me. I'm narrating. We go through like, the 8 different versions of it. Some of these videos go to complete fruition and then get, you know what? It's not working.
Yeah, let's just deconstruct.
Yeah, let's start over.
No, but it's a fun process. It's an interesting process.
It's an amazing process. We just we need to get to like Peter Thiel or something and make it into a movie studio or something like that, so we can just do this all day long.
Yes,
we'll get there. We'll get there. It's super fun.
If there are any billionaires listening to this live stream or recording, by the way, get in touch with us. Hey.
Emails in the description. Let's go. Yeah, it's it's super fun to watch, especially after like but a month later. It's Rain knows this too. Rain and I have been making music together for like 20 years. It's here's the version 16 of the mix. What do you think? You're just like, God, I've got to listen to this again. But hopefully everything works out. And then like a month later, you're like, wow, this is cool.
Yeah,
I like this. I'd watch this. I'd subscribe to the locals by scanning the QR code up at the top left of the screen. I'd join the locals for $4 a month because it's so good.
Was that both parts or just the second one?
So with that's the second one, right, from like a month ago, and tonight's world premiere will be next after we dissect that a bit.
Absolutely.
Because that one gets into a bit of the deception at the intelligence level. The games that are being played, it just remarkable. We've got a hater in chat on Rumble. Later on, Matt, you have to go back and see. We've got some kind of troll. Why would some left-wing Biden voter join Rumble? Well, I mean, please do. So, like, make Rumble into a normal platform. Let's have the left and the right there. But this guy showed up with, where is he here? Hey, what conspiracies are you clowns pushing? Oh, deep state. And he's been going at me, and I'm trying to sneak a little bit of shit in. And just like, God, these people are out there. Why is he here? He obviously gets his core information from Rachel Maddow.
Yeah, no, I don't have that much patience for the bots at this point, or anybody that smells of inauthenticity. So if you disagree with me, that's okay. We can talk. But if I smell that you're actually a dishonest operator or non-existent as a human being and you are a bot, I will flush you and eject you. So that's my approach. I know some people have a lot more tolerance for this stuff. If you can do some jabs and continue that dialogue with the guy, power to you.
I do some hard Twitter, so I'll go in for like a round, but you're right. So where I'm at now in like my mature Twitter phase is like throw it a jab or feel where they're at, but then when they come back with like Trump idiot got racist, then it just like you're not even on a thinking level. There's block and move on.
Yeah, you can't argue with a fish. I mean, a fish is fine as a fish, but it's not there to be debated with,
And so far, that's all this guy's proving himself to be. Trump went to court 60 times, lost all 60. Wow, that's interesting. You think Rachel Maddow would have done a piece on that if he had lost 60 court cases? As far as I know, he's won every court case.
Maddow was really sleeping at the wheel.
Yeah. Oh. So I mean, like at that point, it's just my comment to him is just you think everyone that is saying something that you haven't heard before or you don't like is a knuckle dragging QAnon hick. So just go back to MSNBC. The stuff you want to hear is there. It's everywhere. Go back. What are you doing here? Why are you here? But we're not that. We're not a bunch of idiots sitting here like, deep state there, QAnon, Trump's going to get all the pedos and all that. Like, this is a highly informed conversation on current events. Go back to MSNBC. You don't have to think. Why are you here trying to compete with people who are thinking? Just go somewhere else and don't think anymore. It's
a bit embarrassing. It's a bit embarrassing. But
it is really like I feel bad for them.
They enjoy the embarrassingness. They enjoy being embarrassed. So let the person be.
Yeah.
Let them run around.
Yeah. January 6th was a
with the
coup.
dunce cap on, and that's okay. Let them have their dunce cap.
January 6th was a coup d'etat.
Okay.
Yeah. Never mind the fact that if you're going to undertake a coup d'etat, what do you have to do? You have to take out communications. You have to take out the military. You have to take over the military immediately. There can't be any. You can't be worried about some rogue squadrons and shit that are gonna get in your way. You have to have complete control of the military. You have to take out communications. You have to take over. You want to January 6th. You'd have to take over PBS and ABC so that they can't broadcast what you're doing. Then you'd have to have people all set up and ready to take charge of everything. So, according to these guys, the great plan for the coup d'etat to take over the American government is to send in fucking what's his name, Macho Man with the fucking bear skull with the fucking horns out of his head. Yeah, that's how we're gonna do it.
Yeah, I know.
Just the shaman, send in American shaman. Yeah. Yeah, obviously, and Trump planned that for months. That was his plan to take over the American government, was send in American shaman and just wander around aimlessly in the plaza in the middle of the fucking Capitol building. Because nothing threatens democracy like wandering around aimlessly. Fuck.
Yeah,
and people believe this because they're told it. Oh, Matt, we got our work cut out for us, man. Whew. And so that kind of story is quite easily debunked. In the circles that we run in, most people rejected this ages ago. But the China thing, that's a whole different story. I pop into Twitter spaces every now and then with the groups that I run in, and you've got about 5 to 15 minutes until someone blames everything on China.
Yeah, it's just a very easy. It's an easy hate absorber. It's right up there with the Jews, China and the Jews. Either one, pick one, and they both have been created in a relatively sophisticated way to be very convenient hate absorbers and boogeymen to help us explain away and not think too deeply about the nuances and intricacies of world civilizational history. It's an easy answer. We can hold on to it when we're drowning as something as a flotation device. And it gives us a sense of security that we're holding on to this thing. It's a final, closed, crystallized answer, and it's a complete wind egg. It's both of them are fallacious constructs that hide the actual agencies that are the conduits of an actual evil agenda that is satanic, that has a continuous connection to the family structures and leading mystery cults, shaping the top-down policies of oligarchical programs for centuries and centuries to the days of ancient Babylon. None of those things should we pay too much attention to or try to understand or look at their modern incarnation. None of that really matters because we have the Jews and or the Chinese or some combination. And for those on the left, we have the Russians to hate. So it's absurd. It's the same formula that was used to great success during the Cold War by the John Birch Society, by other organizations that have continued to exert influence even to the present day. And, I think our current video, episode 3, that we're going to premiere today, finally, after people have waited for an hour patiently, they're finally going to be satisfied. And I think, weave together in 25 minutes some very complex ideas that could not have been possible were it not for the multimedia, audio-visual genius that you've been able to bring to the table, making this thing work. So I think people should just sit back, grab your coffee or tea or whatever you're drinking, and just be prepared to learn something.
So, it's funny. I'm in there and I'm worried about am I 500 milliseconds too early with this cut? Should this fade out? Should I cross dissolve to this? Is the music too loud? Blah, 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 blah. But there were several times putting this together where I had to just stop and go like, what? What? This actually happened? And hopefully people will feel the same way too.
Yep.
All right. Let's get the shares. What's that, Rain?
Let's check it out.
Let's do it. All right. Chinese election interference. Five Eyes, NATO, and the ugly truth of CSIS. Here we go. All right. Mute mics, and we're off.
In our last episode, we demonstrated how the Russian foreign interference narrative was based on fictitious lies cooked up in the bowels of British intelligence in order to undo the presidency of Donald Trump. The recently published Durham report even forced such disinformation outlets as CNN to admit that the FBI promoted the story known as Russiagate without any actual evidence. Yet, despite these revelations, citizens are once again falling for the exact same psyop, but this time with a Canadian twist. Rather than focus on the role of the financial oligarchy, which created and manages global intelligence agencies, military operations, and supranational corporations, Canadians from all sides of the political spectrum have found themselves falling head over heels for a newly rebranded foreign interference story told by our very own patriotic intelligence agencies. The foreign aggressor in this story is, of course, China. Canadians woke up the morning of February 17, 2023, to hear that leaked CSIS reports claimed that Beijing used intermediaries to finance the Liberal Party in the elections of 2019 and again in 2021, with the implied aim of installing Justin Trudeau as puppet premier of the Chinese Communist Party.
Russia hates
The parallels to the FBI's debunked Russiagate hoax are hard to ignore.
Russia.
In both narratives, anonymous, unverifiable sources are cited by Canadian and American intelligence agencies to advance the idea that Russia and China have infiltrated Western democracies. In neither case are the claims proven, and good citizens are expected to assume their national intelligence agencies truly are patriotic organizations who truly care about their freedom. Since being made public, this gossip has been spread by extremely cooperative mainstream media outlets that are ironically funded by the very same liberal government which is supposed to be captured by the Chinese enemy. What are some of these allegations which we must assume China is guilty of? It is asserted by classified CSIS reports that the Chinese government gave $250,000 to 11 political candidates for the 2019 election. It is asserted that Chinese agents were assisting Canadian candidates running for political offices. It is asserted that the Chinese government interfered with the nomination of Han Dong as the Liberal Party candidate in Don Valley North. The Chinese government ran an orchestrated machine to ensure a minority liberal government was returned, and that Beijing was determined that the conservatives did not win. The Chinese government stopped the Conservative Party and ensured that select conservative candidates were defeated. The Globe and Mail asserts that Chinese government officials have taken actions to target Conservative MP Michael Chong, his family, and other MPs and their families. Even former Conservative Party leader Erin O'Toole has come out asserting that his failure as a leader had less to do with his support for draconian lockdowns and everything to do with Chinese government interference. The difficulty in assessing the truthfulness or dishonesty of these allegations is challenging, to say the least. No one who has read the CSIS reports has been allowed to speak of their content due to Canada's secrecy laws. Meanwhile, the few who have read them, such as former Governor General David Johnston, says they are full of hot air. And others who are allowed to read them, such as Pierre Poilievre, have turned down the offer.
The government will not pull me into a room, stamp public documents secret, and then tell me I can't speak.
Poilievre's excuse for not reading the reports is that if he does, then he will be forced to not speak about what he read since they are still classified. But if he doesn't read them, then he is free to speculate freely about their content endlessly. As citizens who don't have access to the classified CSIS report itself, we find ourselves asking, who can we trust? David Johnston's well-known connections to the Trudeau family make his opinions appear worthless in the eyes of many who doubt the validity of his report. So, let's take a step back and look at the problem from another vantage point. Since this information is coming from Canada's intelligence agencies, maybe it would be helpful to take a deep breath, step back from the drama and ask, what exactly is CSIS, or the RCMP for that matter? And are they the patriotic, freedom-loving institutions we have been told? Or is a darker picture of another foreign power found to be steering our governments and undermining our democracies, which may not have either Russian or Chinese characteristics? Formed on March 6, 1946, the UK-USA Signals Agreement established what became known as the Five Eyes, that soon involved a global dragnet of intelligence agencies led by Britain's GCHQ and MI6. Soon, other Anglo-Saxon spy agencies such as Canada's Communications Security Establishment and RCMP joined into the alliance, along with partner agencies in Australia and New Zealand. It is no coincidence that March 6, 1946 was also the same day that Winston Churchill delivered his infamous Iron Curtain speech in Fulton, Missouri, setting into motion the Under this new order ushered in by President Truman and Churchill, America's OSS was disbanded, and President Franklin Roosevelt's dream of a US-Russia-China alliance to shape the post-war world was destroyed. In this new scheme for a new world order, America's closest allies that fought by her side to prevent the success of the Nazi war machine were now rebranded as America's enemies, while America's enemies became her closest allies. An Anglo-American special relationship was launched by Truman, and on September 8, 1947, a new intelligence service was created modeled on Britain's MI6 called the Central Intelligence Agency. During the Cold War, Anglo-Saxon governments worked together both to conduct asymmetric warfare and espionage against Russia and China abroad, while also spying on citizens within the nations of the Five Eyes directly. Since it is illegal for national governments of the Five Eyes to infringe upon the civil liberties of their own citizens through mass surveillance, it was deemed expedient for the Five Eyes to create a project dubbed Echelon, in order to coordinate spying on citizens globally within and outside of the alliance itself. The Five Eyes agencies were so secretive that even elected government officials did not know of its existence until the 1970s. Take the case of Australia's Prime Minister, Gough Whitlam. As soon as Whitlam discovered the existence of this agency's tentacles within his own nation, he demanded that it be shut down. But a day before he was to announce his plan to the Australian Parliament, he was called into the Governor-General's office and was promptly fired. That's right. For Commonwealth members of the Five Eyes, the actual head of state is the monarchy's unelected Governor-General and not the Prime Minister. As such, Prime Ministers can, and in the case of Australia, have been fired for disrupting imperial plans. It is well known that the Five Eyes interfaces closely with another organization called the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, or simply NATO. NATO was created in 1949 to bypass the influence which Russia and China held within the United Nations Security Council. And this organization wasted no time to incorporate leading Nazis into its governing structure. Between 1950 until the 1980s, NATO had multiple unreconstructed Nazis in control of multiple departments, including several consecutive commanders of Central Europe. If you find this hard to believe, let's have a look at a few of them. Adolf Heusinger, Chief of Staff of the General Nazis during World War II. In the post-war age, he found new employment as Chief of the West German Army and General of the Bundeswehr from 1957 to 1961. From 1961 to 1964, Heusinger became chairman of the NATO Military Committee, but he wasn't alone. In fact, the position of NATO Commander-in-Chief of Allied Forces Central Europe was a position that was filled solely by
Well. Not sure what's happening.
Damn, it was
We've got
really
some technical.
It was getting really juicy there.
We got some technical stuff going on. I'm just checking the live stream. See what's happening.
No.
What are people saying? Okay, we're back. Cool.
Oh, yeah?
Yep.
Okay.
Stop screen sharing. I'm going to screen share again. We're going to get back onto it. And turn off my iPhone because that is causing an echo.
Well.
Okay.
Sorry, everyone. My God, we're supposed to have flying cars and stuff by now, and all we've got is like bad digital technology. Okay, I'm going to roll back a few minutes, and off we go.
Into its governing structure. Between 1950 until the 1980s, NATO had multiple unreconstructed Nazis in control of multiple departments, including several consecutive commanders of Central Europe. If you find this hard to believe, let's have a look at a few of them. Adolf Heusinger, Chief of Staff of the General Nazis during World War II. In the post-war age, he found new employment as Chief of the West German Army and General of the Bundeswehr from 1957 to 1961. From 1961 to 1964, Huizinga became chairman of the NATO Military Committee, but he wasn't alone. In fact, the position of NATO Commander-in-Chief of Allied Forces Central Europe was a position that was filled solely by former Nazis for 16 years straight, between 1967 and 1983. Even Hitler's intelligence chief,
Okay, we're
It's
gonna
not
try
fair.
some. We're gonna try something else. Am I frozen? Everybody's
No.
frozen. Everything's frozen.
No, I mean, we can hear you.
I can hear you.
Yeah.
Okay. Let me see what's going on in the live stream. Okay, we're good. We're good. Okay, we're gonna try something else.
What if you open it from another window? Like I have it on.
I'm gonna share the actual local file.
Yeah, local file. Okay.
Yep. Okay, just let me close Rumble because it's fucking everything up. There we go. My God.
It's not right.
Oh, that it's just.
Painful.
I mean, shit, man. We did this before a couple times. Okay, so we go past the Nazi parade, but it's actually a good moment for a break.
Yeah.
So this is when I actually had to stop for 2 hours and just kind of like wander aimlessly through my house and find some junk food or something to make me feel better. For almost 2 decades, the head of European NATO were full on highest level ranking Nazis.
Well, it's the European Eastern and Central Command.
Which is like, it's a deal, right? Like, it's a big fucking deal. You'd think they'd do maybe, I don't know, a background search? Were you possibly involved with killing millions of Jews?
Well, the irony is they probably did background searches, which is it's the question of what standards they were using and looking for people's backgrounds.
Well,
It's
the opposite. They were like, we're looking for people who might have killed 1 million people or whatever. Like that's our start. That's our entry level. Yeah. Like what the fuck? Like for 20 years, it's nothing but Nazis. And as I pointed out in a tweet promoting the video tonight, they make these movies, and we just had a series with famous people on Netflix hunting down these evil Nazis hiding everywhere around the world. And we're going to bring them to justice, and it's like half the time it's these innocent like guards, like security guards. And they make this like worldwide show out of we hunted down these Nazis that killed all these Jews. But in the meantime, they had generals, people that were chiefs of staff for the Nazi establishment, openly running NATO.
Yeah.
What? What? Openly. There's no hiding it. They didn't, and they obviously didn't need to obfuscate it. They felt no need to be obscure about it or anything. They knew that no one would care because it wasn't getting reported on. Because this is like early 60s. You're at the height of Project Mockingbird. You know the media is not going to go, hey, by the way, there are Nazi generals running the NATO organization. And here we are now where they're like, oh, poor Ukraine's getting invaded by the evil Russians. And well, poor NATO is under attack, and it's like, fuck, they're all Nazis.
And keep in mind as well that this wasn't just reserved to the Nazi machine that was absorbed, but also Japanese fascists, right? Like leading Japanese fascists were reconstituted and put to work, like Hiro Ishii in Unit 731 that ran the bioterror operations of Japan against American, Russian, and Chinese POWs. We lost Jason. Oh my god.
Yeah, he'll be back.
Wow. This system is just breaking down left and right.
What is going on tonight? Let me see if I pulled my Ethernet cable. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, you're okay.
Holy shit.
It's weird, eh?
They're on to us.
Do you want me to share it from my end, baby? I mean, my
we're on echelon.
Right.
Let me try the local connection.
Okay.
I'm just sharing a file straight from my hard drive, so I don't have to pull it down from Rumble. And
okay,
we'll see how this works. It'll probably start out as a tiny file, and I have to move the window because I don't know. This streaming app is amazing, and it sucks. It's like a lot of modern tech. It's just fucking great, and it's terrible.
Mm-hmm.
And they want a monthly sub,
right?
So
let's give it a shot. I mean,
So everyone watching. Everything you saw tonight requires a monthly sub. You saw some text on the video? That requires a monthly sub. The video required a monthly sub. How we're streaming to you requires a monthly sub. If you'd like to help with that, scan the QR code up at the top left of the screen and join Locals for only $4 a month. We don't require a monthly sub. You can watch us for free in full HD. But all of this costs massive amounts of money and time. So there you go. There's my e-bag. So we're going to try this, and we'll see what happens.
All right.
He wasn't alone. In fact, the position of NATO Commander-in-Chief of Allied Forces Central Europe was a position that was filled solely by former Nazis for 16 years straight, between 1967 and 1983. Even Hitler's intelligence chief, Reinhard Gehlen, found new employment under the CIA's Alan Dulles as the head of West German intelligence from 1956 until 1968. Among those World War II killers who worked with Gehlen in Europe was Stefan Bandera, the vicious Ukrainian fascist,
Gehlen did
and
more
thousands
than
of
gather
members of the
intelligence.
Organization of Ukrainian
The
Nationalists,
former general is
whose skills
responsible
were
for the
put to
brutal
work
trick.
carrying
He is a
out
former captain in the
asymmetric warfare
Gestapo.
against
Okay, there's something about that section of footage. Somehow this, which is a pull from History Channel, somehow that is making the original History Channel clip pull up. Every time right before we go down, I hear the full audio break in from the History Channel clip, and that wasn't there.
Maybe it's got like built-in copyright protection, so if you could try to air it.
Like maybe, but I mean, off of Rumble or off my hard drive?
Well, it's possible.
Shit. All right, let me try to advance and see what happens here.
In 1960, Turkey's Prime Minister Adnan
Chung writes
the anti-imperial leaders like Italy's former Prime Minister Aldo Moro in 1978, Sweden's Prime Minister Olof Palme in 1986, known as Sweden's JFK, Italian industrialist Enrico Mattei in 1960, Turkey's Prime...
Why?
Can't see anything.
What the fuck, dudes?
It's all black screen.
Yeah.
Okay. You know, we've never had any issues before.
Well, hopefully we've gotten people's curiosity going, and the links to watch the full thing on Rumble or BitChute should be available. I guess you'll make it available for everybody watching.
So hopefully that'll work.
Well, we're going to take one more stab at it.
Known as Sweden's JFK, Italian industrialist Enrico Mattei in 1960, Turkey's Prime Minister Adnan Menderes in 1961, along with 2 cabinet colleagues, and U.S. President Kennedy in 1963, and multiple attempts against French President Charles de Gaulle.
Chung writes that on top of targeted assassinations, NATO's secret armies
were to be used against the people. The desire was that by staging false flag operations that were blamed on communists, panic and revulsion would be invoked, sending voters flocking to the welcoming arms to so-called secure right-wing governments.
In 1959, an internal NATO briefing minute dated June 1st of that year slipped into the hands of a British newspaper, which revealed that the task of the stay-behind units had been switched from confronting a Soviet invasion to confronting an internal subversion. The secret armies were henceforth to play a determining role not only in the general policy level of domestic warfare, but also in the politics of domestic emergency. What this meant was that a secret army of stay-behind units under the direction of NATO, in absence of a Soviet threat, were to direct their actions to the internal matters which would include espionage and acts of terrorism on the citizens of Europe, with the support and cover of those nations' police units. This would be used to further centralize control within right-wing governments who supported the NATO apparatus. Of the dozens of cases of domestic terror unleashed by this operation across Europe, the most well-documented is the Years of Lead, launched in Italy in 1969, which saw hundreds of bombs detonated by supposedly communist terrorist cells in shopping malls, trains, and other public venues, killing hundreds. As was revealed in declassified reports, these terror cells did not receive their funding, support, and directives from either the Kremlin or Beijing, as duped citizens were led to believe, but rather by NATO and the Five Eyes. NATO's strategy of tension finally became public knowledge, dubbed Operation Gladio, when Italian Prime Minister Andreotti revealed it to the world in a public speech in 1992. The significance for Canada will be known shortly. The growth of the surveillance state across the Five Eyes nations has been made possible by the belief that terrorism, both foreign and domestic, is such a threat that resisting it requires the abandonment of civil liberties in order to protect the greater good. But is this popular belief true? In 2016, a Canadian appeals court overruled guilty sentences handed down to a Canadian couple who were caught by the RCMP before their 2016 jihadi plot to bomb a public venue on Canada Day could occur. Why did the appeals judge overrule their sentence? Because on closer examination, it was discovered that every single member of the operation which radicalized the young people, trained them to make bombs, and even scripted their attack were RCMP informants. Earlier cases of controlled domestic terrorist movements in Canada saw CSIS, that is Canada's Security and Intelligence Service, erase thousands of hours of wiretaps of Sikh terrorists that detonated bombs in 1984, which led to 329 dead in the worst act of aviation terrorism until 9/11. What was on those wiretaps that CSIS was so afraid the public would see? Is it possible that those Sikh terrorists were also groomed by Canadian intelligence agencies, just as the more recent jihadi terror cell had been groomed in 2016? Or is it more similar to the case of the FBI handlers of Egyptian informant Ahmad Salem, who ignored the dozens of warnings of their informant and let the 1993 World Trade Center bombing take place, even though it could have easily been prevented? In that case, Salem had the wits to secretly record hundreds of hours of conversation with his FBI handlers, which were then made public by the New York Times on October 28, 1993. By destroying their wiretaps, CSIS ensured that these questions will never be answered. And while Canadians were told that only racists and white supremacists resist government lockdowns or promote trucker protests, it is too often forgotten that Canada's largest white supremacist group, known as the Heritage Front, was revealed to have been founded by a CSIS agent named Grant Bristol, who ran the organization between 1988 and 1994. Anglo-Canadian intelligence controls of domestic terrorism, which reek of Operation Gladio tactics, can even be traced as far back as the nominally Maoist terrorist organization Le Front de Libération de Québec of the 1960s that set dozens of mailbox bombs off across the province. Not only did the RCMP security services get caught red-handed managing FLQ cells, spreading FLQ graffiti on buildings, and even supplying explosives to the group itself, but the FLQ's intellectual leader, Pierre Valliere, was also the editor-in-chief of the very same magazine, Cité Libre, which was run for a decade by none other than Canada's Prime Minister, Pierre Elliott Trudeau. As Pierre Valliere himself later wrote in his Execution of Pierre Laporte, it was a special operation division of the RCMP that oversaw the murder of the kidnapped Deputy Premier of Quebec in 1970, and the illegal arrest of over 400 Quebec citizens under the fog of domestic terrorism, itself a construct of the same department of the RCMP and the Strategic Operations Center, which interfaced between Pierre Elliott Trudeau directly and the military during the crisis. Due to the crisis caused by this terrorist cell, martial law was imposed onto Quebec for the month of October in 1970, as the FLQ terrorists who kidnapped Deputy Premier Pierre Laporte refused to negotiate with authorities. In 1977, the Quebec government launched the Keeble Commission to investigate the evidence of the RCMP's role in controlling FLQ terror cells. This was followed by the federal Macdonald Commission, which unveiled more abuses by the Canadian intelligence community during its 4-year inquiry of 1977 until 1981. In its final report published in 1981, the Macdonald Commission recommended removing national security matters from the RCMP's jurisdiction by creating a new, partially civilian spy agency. Trudeau's right-hand man and fellow Cité Libre writer Michael Pitfield oversaw the creation of this new agency dubbed the Canadian Security Intelligence Service, CSIS, in 1983 as a branch of the Privy Council Office in order to continue psychological operations, but now under a new name. The origin of CSIS and parallels to the operation of NATO's secret armies, which carried out the murder of Prime Minister Aldo Moro in 1977, following the identical pattern as seen in the case of Quebec's Pierre Laporte, is jarring to say the least. The next time the Emergency Measures Act would be used in Canada was by another Trudeau Prime Minister on behalf of the Five Eyes over 50 years later. If anyone wishes to look through the voluminous RCMP CSIS files accumulated on Pierre Trudeau's strange connections with the FLQ, they would be out of luck, as historians were informed in 2019 that the entire Trudeau record archive was secretly destroyed by CSIS in 1989, simply because someone deemed they weren't interesting. Canadians and Americans have forgotten that the abuses of these Five Eyes intelligence agencies was already exposed over 45 years ago during the 1975 Church Committee hearings and 1976 House Select Committee on Assassinations. These hearings unveiled such secret CIA projects as MKUltra, Project Mockingbird, and COINTELPRO, the latter which was directly implicated in terrorizing anti-imperial movements such as those led by Martin Luther King Jr., Fred Hampton, and Malcolm X, under the pretext that these organizations were communist fronts. The reason why Canadians even have an organization called CSIS in the first place is because the terrorist-deploying branch of the RCMP Special Operations Units were exposed over 40 years ago. But the idea that they are now clean, patriotic agencies is a myth. These agencies were created and operated by fascists throughout the Cold War and carried out atrocities, terrorism, and assassinations under the name of fighting communism in order to convince Western citizens that we had to give up our liberties to save our freedoms. It is clear that the threat of communism was used to silence those who were actual patriots of their countries and were leaders of democratic movements who were called communists, and this absurdly continues to this day, and we continue to buy into it. This is well documented and is a truth we need to acknowledge when looking into what these Five Eyes and NATO intelligence agencies have been consistently working towards for over 78 years. Although the Cold War is said to have ended in 1991, the techniques used by Operation Gladio to maintain constant terror in the population has continued with the war on Islamic terrorism. But now that Russia and China have decided to resist the unipolar agenda for global world government and depopulation, the old boogeyman of communist infiltration of our Western democracies has been unveiled once more. And almost like a magic spell, Western media consumers are falling back into their old Cold War profiles and forgetting about the real agencies that murdered the Kennedy brothers in 1963 and 1968. They are forgetting about the false flags that enmeshed us into a war in Vietnam and carried out bombings of World Trade Centers in 1993 and 2001. The question is now, if you have this knowledge, do you want to continue to drink Five Eyes Kool-Aid portraying Russia and China as your boogeymen once again? Or do you want to fight the real enemy that has infiltrated your government?
Man, who is this Cynthia Chung?
Her work was essential for big parts of that video, and her book, it's such an invaluable resource that anybody listening, if you don't have The Empire in Which the Black Sun Never Set, The Anglo-American Origins of Fascism in the 20th Century, order it now. It's essential reading, and it's volume 1 and volume 2. But the whole Operation Gladio, Nazi, the whole adoption of Nazis and unreconstructed fascists into the entire Anglo-American intelligence war machine throughout the whole Cold War, that's all in her book in greater detail and coherence than I've ever seen it anywhere else. And I'm not saying that just because she's my wife.
The fascists didn't lose the war. They didn't lose the war at all. They just got an out.
Yeah, no. Even Winston Churchill's Iron Curtain speech, people say, "Oh, that was British policy that created the Iron Curtain," that ushered in the Cold War on the same day that the Five Eyes were created. He actually got that entire speech, that entire idea of an Iron Curtain from the Nazi foreign minister, or what's his name?
What?
Count Lutz Schwerin von Krozik. That's the
He's
Nazi
a count
minister who gave that as a Berlin speech in 1945. And it was published in the London Times, and that was picked up. The Iron Curtain speech was a Nazi program, and adopted by the same British patrons who actually wanted a fascist world government back in the 1930s and 40s. And because the question is, always, why did it not succeed? If there was all of this effort from Wall Street and London, banking, industrial, secret society interests, keep in mind, the Nazi machine was run by a satanic Thula society cult of, this stuff gets like into human sacrifice stuff. If all of this was designed as well with a eugenics pseudo religion for the elite to manage a reducing world population, that was the whole idea. Why did that attempt at a new world order fail? And if you think about it, you had, on the one hand, you had Franklin Roosevelt and the reemergence of the Lincoln Patriots in America around Franklin Roosevelt, who did battle with the fifth column British deep state that had been embedded and had overseen the growth of this parasite in the heart of America.
so you had that, but it wasn't just that, because even the sacrifices that America and Canada made were minuscule compared to the sacrifices made by primarily Russia and China. Russia, who lost 26 million of their people, China, who lost 10 million of their people, absorbing, Russia absorbed over 90% of the most brutal, German Wehrmacht was absorbed by Russia, not by the Allies or the rest of the Western Allies. And China took on 10 million dead of its people, taking on the Japanese fascist machine. Again, big into human experimentation, eugenics. And
because
so
Nazi Germany had a real agenda to push east.
Yeah. The idea was to use Russia as a Slavic Untermenschen slave colony to extract wealth. The Japanese were told that they were going to receive the jurisdiction of China to extract wealth as their slave colony. And that was going to be the way the New World Order was going to be divided up into regional jurisdictions of fascist managerial controllers, all beholden to the bankers' dictatorship centered in the city of London as the first among equals structure of power of banking that would then direct the global machine of fascism to manage local humans.
We can see actual proof of that through both Ukraine, that Nazism fully infiltrated. They were printing newspapers. They were controlling the media.
Yeah.
The openly in Ukraine became fully Nazi, and in Japan's treatment of China, that a country could be so brutally fascistic, so brutally murderous.
Yeah,
their control of China when they had it is just one of the great terrors of history. It's not a racist thing. It's just the Asian people, they enjoy a totalitarian government to some degree. Now, it'd be nice to see a totalitarian government that was all about liking everybody, but if that government is about hating and killing, they line up pretty quickly behind it. And Japan is great proof of that, as has been Korea and China at certain times in their history as well. Does the Asian people greatly respect authority, almost to a fault?
Well, I think that Stalin and Franklin Roosevelt had an agreement. They were able to recognize that they could trust each other, whereas neither one of them really trusted at all Winston Churchill. And there's a great, in Susan Butler's excellent book on Roosevelt and Stalin. Stalin makes a point saying to one of his assistants that there are two capitalists, one of which we can work with and one of which we cannot. And he says that the industrial capitalists we can work with, which is why he liked Roosevelt, and then the feudal capitalists we cannot work with. And those are, of course, he was referring to those who would use the veneer of capitalism as a cover to really advance imperial feudalism, to keep people like talking cows on a plantation, poor, underdeveloped, underpopulated. But like, this is the George Soros, City of London, modern JP Morgan capitalism. They're not really capitalism. What they want is population reduction, which for a true capitalist is bad business, because more people at a higher quality of life means more productivity, means more business. That's good. So you got these two different types. And Roosevelt understood that you've got good socialists and bad socialists. He didn't oversimplify the way that today we've been sort of indoctrinated to oversimplify these terms to stupidity. And he saw that, no, you have industrial socialists who care about anti-imperialism. They care about labor. They care about overcoming the limits to growth. And then you have the feudal socialists, like the Fabian Society socialists, right, who are anti-humanist imperialists who want to use the veneer of socialism to attract labor, abuse labor, the poor, but only to weaponize the people to become battering rams to undermine the nations that they live within for the service of the very death cult that calls itself socialist from the top. Like, George Bernard Shaw, H.G. Wells, Bertrand Russell, these guys all call themselves socialist. This is the Klaus Schwabian socialists out there, right? They're not really that. They don't care about people. They don't care about social values. So it's this schism that we found ourselves in the Cold War. Made everybody, I think, overly simplistic in defining and labeling terms.
Oh, we lost Jason again. Shit. It happened again. He's got bad luck on his side, or some infiltration, or
Fucking
somebody
hell, man.
stabilizing him. Yeah, somebody's messing with
Can
you,
you
man.
guys hear me?
Yeah.
Yep.
I spent a lot of money on this computer.
I mean, there's
I'm supposed to have the best Ethernet, the best.
Yeah.
Oh boy, painful.
Just
Ironic.
frozen again. Totally ironic. That was just brilliant.
Well, yeah. I mean, it is Canada. I mean, I won't. We can't assume that he's not being messed with.
And
So
just continue with what you were saying there, Matt.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, so people have been induced to lose the train of like the actual theme of world universal history, which is actually a battle over the concept of humankind made as something divine, capable of overcoming our limits to growth by making new discoveries and applying them for new technologies that allow us to be happier, be more fulfilled, live longer, have more of us, right, with greater access to our mind than we had prior to the discovery. And then you have the other current that has been trying to impose the idea that human beings are just another form of selfish animal to be controlled by a master alpha class, you know, and should always be kept controlled, kept stupid, kept selfish, kept ungovernable. Because the more we can be made, like this goes back to what we were saying at the beginning with the little banter about the corruption of the arts and aesthetics. But the more that we can be made to think that ugliness is beauty and my personal hedonism is my metric upon which I judge what is right and wrong, well, then that's going to be a society that's going to get drunk off of its own freedom. And it's going to be so incapable of self-government that it will beg to have some overlord class come in as zookeepers to govern us for ourselves, because we recognize on some level in a consumer society, right, that values us just because we consume and not create, that we're not really ultimately capable of creating, of governing our own society. And so, of course, it's kind of like a blessing to think, oh, maybe a one world government, like we saw in the movie. You know, you got this in our popular culture, like the Watchmen movie, right? That had, as the end of the day, the big moral of the story was maybe we do need to kill off like billions of human beings with controlled nuclear bombs in order to shake us into accepting a new way of a new green paradigm of thinking small and being more in harmony with nature. That's the moral of the story. Like, you know,
That's what we have coming up next for Rising Tide Foundation with you and Cynthia Chung is a documentary series that proves there is no limit to growth.
Yeah.
We can grow without cost.
Yep.
That is the giant conspiracy theory, quote unquote.
That's it.
Yep.
That's it.
And that's next.
And that's why they hate Russia, and that's why they hate China right now, is because these countries are bringing online a system that values human beings over money, and that presumes that we can always have more people by applying new technologies and encouraging new discoveries into energy, into other forms of infrastructure that allow us to always break the Malthusian trap. That's what they're doing on every level. So that's why they must be destroyed, and that's why we must hate and fear them. And if we don't hate and fear them enough already, we have to be taught that we should, through our benevolent CSIS, FBI, you know, MI6 intelligence agencies.
It's always been this. It's always been this. You'll have flying cars, and AI will do everything for you. But at the same time, this narrative of you're taking too much. There's too many of you. The Earth can't support you. You all can't have the flying cars. You all can't have the gas. You all can't have the solar panels. We're going to have to reduce you.
There's only
while we're being told it's everything's amazing in the future, and the dichotomy it doesn't make sense. One side has to be right, and as of right now, I'm not seeing the limits to growth. I'm not seeing the bullshit they're talking about. I don't think we've touched the limits to growth.
Not at all. You know, I mean, it really. Oh, sorry, Rain. Go on. What was that?
I was going to ask you what's your take on BRICS, and how is that going to affect the West here going forward?
Well, the BRICS is representing, in my analysis, the best of Western tradition that was anti-oligarchic and anti-Malthusian,
that has been lost. Like, we dropped the torch. So currently that legacy is being picked up by the alliance manifesting in Eurasia right now, primarily, which is bringing on and attracting a lot of African, South American countries. Like, the list now of nations who want to join the BRICS, it's something like another 18 countries are on the list.
Right.
And if you look at the type of political, economic, social policy orientation, it represents the sort of thing we used to do before I was born. And when you Rain, were like a little baby, like. There's barely a living memory of this in our current society, but that's what they're doing in terms of, like, China's been able to build 40,000 kilometers of high-speed rail in the last 17 years alone, where Canada has zero. They're applying magnetic levitation rail, advanced space tech, space exploration, and their idea of, like, AI. When you look at their application of AI from Eurasia, it's based on it's very much based on the idea of a supportive tool to support the growth of the physical economy, not as a means of simply controlling a depopulated, dumbed down zombie class. So it's all of the same words we're using, but the whole contour, like the context, the dynamic purpose design application of a lot of the tools that have the same labels and words is a different universe. Different set of values. So for me, it offers. If the BRICS weren't around being led by people who seem to understand the nature of the satanic beast, currently, I'd be a lot more depressed and a lot less productive. I gotta say, there's a lot less hope, I think, for humanity at this point.
What do you think about it, Rain? What do you think about rise of BRICS? What do you think about rise of these nations that have the oil that we're selling?
Well, I mean, it's probably a good idea. I guess my worry is that if the West and the powers that be, NATO, whoever, don't want to see them succeed, I mean, this is something that could trigger a real World War III. That'd be my concern.
Well, that's probably why they're amping all this shit up so hard.
Yeah.
You know? Oh, Russia's just pure evil. If I had a dime for everyone I've encountered on Twitter, on Rumble, on our videos, comments that think that Putin is a dictator oligarch who kills everyone who disagrees with them. This is the kind of language they're using to amp up our hatred, getting ready for something like BRICS. When all you need to do is actually just ask someone or look at a website from Russia to find out that they're fully giant, openly active counterparties to Putin in Russia. They actually aren't killed. The Communist Party regularly comes in second place in Russia. There are open news outlets that operate in the open, totally left wing, criticizing Putin at every measure. No one's been killed.
Well, people have been killed, but just by if you look at who did the killing, you'll tend to find that it's British intelligence, either with their penetrations, their collaborators in Russia, which still haven't been purged fully, or inside of Britain itself, where many of the Russian oligarchs and traders went to seek sanctuary to avoid going to prison.
Yeah, that's right. And then they end up poisoned. Yeah,
and then they end up poisoned in Britain. Right, like poor Skripal or Berezovsky, the sociopathic billionaire who came to power in the 90s, who also died, and then they're because why? Well, they're more useful to their handlers dead than alive, which then can be blamed on the big bad authoritarian Putin, who wanted to just kill these people who had insignificant influence on anything. No, I mean it's the way it's always worked that way.
And any attempts that I've made to look into the situation is Russia is increasingly seeming like perhaps the last bastion of republicanism in the world right now. Like there's actually freedom of speech. There's they have a conservative bent under Putin. Obviously, they're very Christian is good and traditionalism is good, and that's why he gets voted in overwhelmingly. But I don't know. I'm not seeing any evidence for these claims that are constantly put out about both Russia and China. and China. China is just, if you speak up, you're killed. The China has a social credit system. Meanwhile, the three of us lived through the convoy. The Rain and I, we had a buddy of ours on for a stream whose wife got her, the CBC contacted her after obviously CSIS hacked the list of donors to the Give Send Go,
Yeah.
and threatened her. They're like, "Hey, you want to do an interview with us? If you don't want to do an interview with us, we're going to release your name as a backer of international terrorism."
Yeah. Yeah, we have
And
people
like,
who have been
who has a social credit system?
Huh.
Does China have one, or do we have one? And by being angry at China, maybe China does have one. Maybe. Who cares? It's China. The problem right now is that we definitely have one. They stole people's bank accounts. There were people who couldn't make their mortgage payments. They couldn't make their payments on equipment, truck equipment, and farm equipment because they all they did was click support on that Give Send Go for the truckers. We
Aren't
have
there
a social credit system.
aren't there still people arrested who have not been released from
There are
prison?
people still going through the legal system. As far as in jail, I couldn't back that up, but I mean, people in the convoy, Tamara Litch and others, just recently got out of it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Well, no,
yeah.
January 6th as well. We still have we
Oh
definitely
God.
still have people uncharged in prison 2 years later.
And
who's-
other people charged under obviously political circumstances.
yeah, I mean this kid as well. I forgot his name. Who's was at a Christian school and said there's two genders. Now his parents have both been fired from their jobs and they're being audited. I mean their lives are constantly being destroyed. There's an intention to do that from the top, right? Just because their kid said, "No, I'm from a Christian school and I believe there's two genders, and thus you must be destroyed."
Right? And we have a social credit system, and that is why I wanted to make these videos with you. At the end of the day, and what a lot of people are going to get wrong about this is that they're going to think that you and me and Rain are here to like say, "Hey, you know what? Chinese communism's great. Everybody, let's be communist Chinese." No, I don't give a fuck about. Sorry for I swore. Okay, all right. Now YouTube's going to cancel our channel. I don't give a shit about how China runs China. It's kind of communist, a little bit. It's a little bit free market, whatever. I don't care. I'm not advocating for bringing China here. What I'm worried about is social credit systems here right now. And I think the constant reframing of everything into China's messing with our elections, China has agents here, is to distract from the very fact that we're setting up a communist state that watches everything you do and eventually will lead to deciding how you spend your money, reporting everything that you do. We have the social credit system. And if you watch, everyone watching, Brian Berletic, the new Atlas on YouTube, incredible channel. You know Brian Berletic, right, Matt?
Yeah. No, high
Oh my
value. I recommend that channel to everybody.
He's a god, and he has videos where he directly addresses this and disproves that there is a Chinese social credit score. There's no such thing. And so while we're all mad here and people just throw it out there because those Chinese commies, they and their social credit system, at least we're not that. No, we are that. And the Chinese themselves comment on it. I've seen videos where people break down Chinese social media and they're making fun of us for how bad we are over here.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's there's a lack of humility, and we need to discover a little bit of a power to self-examine our own blemishes and warts which are really, really disgusting at this point, which we refuse to look at. And by not looking at these wars, and I think our documentaries that we've been doing have been forcing the light onto this pus pretty effectively. But by not doing that, we lose an ability to properly, in a clear-headed way, judge not only our neighbors, our future, we lose the ability of the art of judgment heavily. And we fall into all sorts of trappings that have been set for us by virtue of our desire to hold on to our ignorant.
Well, there's a clip I use all the time on Twitter of that show that you go on with the guy. He's the gorilla.
Oh yeah. The gorilla economist.
V the gorilla.
Yeah.
Great fucking example. And it was several months ago, and you came on, and it was all about China and stuff. And he exploded and did this diatribe. Oh no, it's never us. It's not us. It's China. It's the Chinese. It's Russia. Oh, it's never us. It's never the people that we elected into government. It's them. And I think that is ultimately what we're looking at here and why we made these videos. That there's evil shit going on, and they know all they have to do is say, it's China. It's Russia.
Yeah.
And move on. You don't even need proof. You don't need anything. It's not us.
People fall into profile way too easily. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, what was it in the New Testament? I think it was in the book of Matthew that you have the judge not the splinter in your brother's eye before you pull out the log in your own.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, good stream, boys.
Excellent. Yep. I think we can call it for a night. That was it's pretty epic, man.
Yeah, it was good. I mean, despite the little the sand being thrown into the gears.
Dude, I am paying significant for this, so I am on to support tomorrow to find out what the hell happened. We did this before. It was fine.
Yeah.
Why was tonight such a mess? I have no idea.
Well,
but I'm gonna find out.
Yeah, do figure that out. And for anybody listening, go to the description, or in the description box. I would imagine, right? You'll be able to put in the links to the BitChute and Rumble.
Right now on the screen, hold your phone up and scan that QR code, and you'll go right to Matt Ehret's channel and this video.
Oh,
immediately.
Sweet. Yeah.
Yep.
So share that, spread this video far and wide. We really want this to get a dent in the zeitgeist. So spread that out, and
we need to question whenever they tell us anything that comes from the intelligence community. Is it me or has the word community? Is that I hear that like 8 times a day now? Community. Like I actually watched a YouTube video the other day that talked about the organized crime community.
Oh.
Like, has this word become completely corrupted?
Well, definitely the word intelligence has become corrupted.
That's
for sure.
Yeah, no kidding. No kidding. All right,
man.
Guys. Well, let's call it a night, and excellent stream, excellent premiere, and even with its technical failings, at least people will scan the QR code to the right, scan that with your phone to watch the video in perfect 1080p without interruption. So our little technical interruptions probably tease them, like
I hope so.
Yeah, a little like tease, and and we'll get ready for part 4. What do we do in part 4? What do you think, Matt?
Uyghur genocide.
Uyghurs, oh my god. Oh, and then we got to go back to fucking what's his name, Sweden.
Oh yeah. No, let's tackle that one. But first, we'll do a little segue on why overpopulation is bunk. We'll do a couple of videos there. Then we'll go back to our series and tackle the Uyghur genocide myth.
Next is Cynthia Chung's No Limits to Growth. I can't wait for this one.
Yeah, that sounds interesting.
Yeah, it'll be fun.
All right. Thank you, everyone. And we're going to end the stream now, and we'll catch you on the next one.
Have a good night, everybody.